वेलकम बैक टू आवर यूट्यूब चैनल। और आज का जो हम टॉपिक डिस्कस करेंगे वो है सबऑर्डिनेट कोड्स पे डिस्कस करेंगे। उससे पहले अनअकैडमी यूपीएससी चैंपियनशिप 2.0 ऑल इंडिया फ्री मॉक टेस्ट सीरीज दे रहा है आपको, जो यूपीएससी सीएसी प्रीलिम्स 2020-2021 पेपर 1 जेएस। और आपको एक चांस मिलेगा कि आप यूपीएससी सीएससी 2019 टॉपर्स से, अनअकैडमी एजुकेटर से, और आपको सब्सक्रिप्शन स्कॉलरशिप भी मिले। ये हमें पता है, ये हमारे जो टेस्ट है वो कंडक्ट हो चुके हैं 30 अगस्त, 6 सितंबर, 13 सितंबर, 20 सितंबर एंड 27 सितंबर। तो आप एनरोल कर सकते हो 27 सितंबर के एग्जाम के लिए। So as we know that we have 10 days left for our exam, so if you really want to complete your preparation or brush up some of your doubts or concepts, then you can start with UPSC CSE 2020 with an academy. Now this one subscription has unlimited benefits, like you can learn from your home, unlimited access to all resources and top educators, full syllabus coverage, double doubt clearing session, live test series, study material in PDF format, answer writing sessions, and it will be done under our mentor and guidance. So this is also a complete one-stop solution for every UPSC CSE preparation, because we have structured batches with top educators, batches in Hindi, English bilingual, late night as well as 2-year batches, 100% syllabus coverage, vast range of optional prelims test series with evaluation, main test series, dedicated doubt clearing session. Then we have daily current affair practice on 7:30 p.m. Essay and answer writing practice is also there, and we will also provide you with your performance analysis so that you can improve in your performance. And along with that, we'll also prepare you for interview also, which will really help you in the long term. So we have four complete, as we know, we have four complete batches. The first batch is in bilingual, in which we have UPSC CSE 2021 in Hindi, English, both language, and then we have Hindi, and then we have our third batch that is complete in English, that is for 2021. And then we have our fourth batch, that is for JS, that is for your UPSC CSE 2022. So we have four complete batch preparations side by side, so you can enroll, that are starting from 21 September 2020. So now the ultimate revision booster prelims batch course is also started with this. And the ultimate revision booster for prelims 2020, we have bilingual and English. So you can enroll here for free, and duration is from 5th to 30th September, and we have free live classes from Monday to Friday along with the sectional quizzes also. Now if you subscribe now, you will get 10% off. You just need to apply this code SIMPLYT. You will get 10% off on your subscription. Now we have daily current affair series that is completely free, and it will be given on 7:30 p.m. 20 question 20 minutes, and it will be for 40 marks along with your test analysis. So the correct answers will be in the green, and the incorrect will be in red. So along with that, you will also get your performance among your class, like in percentile. So this will help you to improve your lows. Now if you really like our channel, you can actually join this on YouTube, Telegram, or UPSC. So, and if you want to give a good suggestion, then you can comment in the comment box. So let's start subordinate codes. So basically now the state judiciary, basically as we all know, that consists of one high court and second a hierarchy of subordinate courts that are also known as the lower courts. Now the subordinates are called because they are basically subordination to the state court, and their function is below and under all the high courts at the district and lower levels. Now let's talk about what are the constitutional provisions that has been given to the subordinate courts. Under Article 233 to 237 in Part 6 in Constitution, basically they try to make some of the provisions like regulating the organization of subordinate courts and to ensure its dependence from the executive. The first is the appointment of all the district judges. So now the appointment, posting, promotion of district judges in a state are basically made by the governor of the state in consultation with the high court. And and a person to be appointed as a district judge should basically have some of the qualification. One, he should not already be in service of any state or central government. Second, he should have been an advocate or a pleader for 7 years. And C, he should be recommended by the High Court for appointment. Now, second, that we are talking about, the second basically the provision that is there is that the appointment of other judges, for the appointment of person other than the district judges to the judicial service of the state are basically made by the governor of the state after the consultation with the State Public Service Commission and the High Court. Now, the third point over here is basically the control over subordinate courts. Now, the control over all the district court and the subordinate courts, basically it includes the posting, promotion, and the leaving of persons that are belonging to judicial service of a state. Then holding an post inferior to the post of district judge is also vested in the High Court. Now let's talk about the interpretation of the expression that it means about the district judge. So basically district judge का मतलब ये है कि जो जज जो सिटी सिविल कोर्ट, एडिशनल डिस्ट्रिक्ट जज या फिर जॉइंट डिस्ट्रिक्ट जज, असिस्टेंट चीफ, स्मॉल कॉज कोर्ट, चीफ प्रेसिडेंसी मैजिस्ट्रेट, additional chief presidency magistrate, and etc. have been used. So basically for the district judge, and the expression that we actually use for judicial services, which mean that एक service होता है जो कंसिस्ट करता है एक्सक्लूसिवली जो लोग होते हैं, जो पर्सन उसमें होते हैं, वो इंटेंडेड होते हैं कि उनको ये जो पोस्ट है वो फिल करनी है, जो डिस्ट्रिक्ट जज की होगी, और जो अदर सिविल जुडिशियल पोस्ट होंगे जो इंफीरियर होते हैं टू द पोस्ट ऑफ द डिस्ट्रिक्ट जज. Now the fifth point over here is about the application of all the provisions of the certain magistrate. Like the governor may basically direct the above mentioned provisions relating to the person in the state judicial service that would apply to any class or classes of magistrate in the state. Now let's talk about the structure and jurisdiction. Basically the organization structure over here and the jurisdiction and the nomenclature of the subordinate judiciary are basically laid down all by the state, and they differ slightly from state to state. So broadly speaking, there are basically 3 tiers of civil and criminal courts that are below the High Court. Now this district judge is basically the highest judicial authority in the district that is given to him, and he possesses the original and the appellative jurisdiction in both the civil as well as some of the in criminal matters. So basically a district judge is also the session judge, we can also say that, and when he deals with all the civil cases, he is also known as the district judge. When he hears the criminal cases, he is known as the session judge. So you can mark this point in your book, or you can just note down this point. And the district judge basically he tries to exercise both the judicial and administrative power, and he also has some supervisory powers over all the subordinate courts in the district, and appeals against his orders and judgment that basically lie to the High Court. Now the session judge basically has the power to impose any sentence, including the life imprisonment, capital punishment, that is also known as the death sentence. However, a capital punishment is basically passed by him if it is subjected to confirmation by the High Court, whether there is an appeal or not. Now, below the district and sessions court stands the court of subordinate judge on the civil side and the court of civil judicial magistrate on the criminal side. Now, the subordinate judge basically exercises unlimited jurisdiction over all the civil suits, and the chief judicial magistrate basically decides the criminal cases which are punishable with the imprisonment for a term to 7 years. At the lowest, on the civil side, the court of munshif, and on the criminal side, the court of judicial magistrate. Now basically tries to possess some of the limited jurisdiction, and it decides that the civil cases of small pecuniary stake, and the judicial magistrate tries the certain criminal cases which are punishable with imprisonment for a term of 3 years. In some of the metropolitan city, there are city civil courts like chief judges on the civil side, and the courts of metropolitan magistrate on the criminal side. So some of the states and president towns have basically tries to establish some small causes courts, and these courts basically decide the civil cases of small value in summary manner, and their decisions are basically final in nature, and the high court basically has a power to revise any of their decisions. And in some of the courts like the panchayat courts, there are basically they try to solve all the petty civil or criminal cases, and they are variously known as the Nyay Panchayat, Gram Kacheri, Adalati Panchayat, or Panchayat Adalat, and so on. Now, the National Legal Services Authority, in this topic we'll cover about the Article 39A of the Constitution. Basically, it provides every poor and weaker section of society free legal aid, so that they can ensure that justice is served to everyone. Then in Article number 14 and 21A and 21 and 22 1 clause, basically the constitution has also made it obligatory for the state to ensure that there should be proper equality of law in the legal system, which actually tries to promote justice, and on that basis equal opportunity is given to every citizen. Now, in the year 1987, now the Legal Services Authority Act was basically enacted by the Parliament, which came into force on 9th November 1995, and it was to establish a nationwide uniform network by providing the free and competent legal services to all the weaker sections of the society on the basis of equal opportunity. Now, the National Legal Services Authority, that is also known as NALSA, has been constituted under the Legal Services Authorities Act in 1987, and it tried to monitor and evaluate all the implementation of legal aid and the programs, and to basically lay down some of the policies and principles for making the legal services that are available under this act. Now, in every state, we can see that a state legal services authority, and in every high court, a high court legal services committee has also been constituted. Basically, the district legal services authorities, the taluk legal services committees have also been constituted in district, and most of the taluk basically try to give effect to all the policy and direction of NALSA, and try to provide all the legal services to the people, and try to conduct the lok adalats in the state. Now, the Supreme Court Legal Services Committee is also constituted basically some of the function like to administer and implement all the legal services that of the program insofar that actually relates to the Supreme Court of India. Now, the NALSA basically tries to lay down some of the policies, principles, guidelines, and it tries to frame effective and economical schemes for every state and legal services authority to implement all the legal services program that are there throughout our country. So, this is their primary duty to perform. Now, the state legal authority or the district legal services, the taluk and etc. have also been asked to discharge like some of the main functions on a proper regular basis. First, to provide all the free and competent legal services to all the eligible persons. Second, to organize the lok adalats for amicable settlement of disputes. And the third, to organize a legal awareness camps in all the rural area, basically the free legal services. That includes the payment of court fees, process fees, all the charges which are actually payable in connection with any legal proceeding. Now, the B point we discuss about is they will be provided with the service of lawyers in the legal proceedings, and obtaining and supply of certain certified copy of orders and other document in their legal proceeding. Now, the preparation of appeal or the paper book basically includes all the printing and translation of documents in legal proceedings. Now, the person who are actually eligible for all the free and legal services includes women, children, members of SC/ST, industrial workmen, victims of mass disaster, violence, flood, drought, or any other natural calamity. Then we have disabled person in custody, then person whose annual income does not exceed more than 1 lakh in the Supreme Legal Services Committee. Then they have made this limit to 1 lakh 25,000, and the victims of trafficking in human beings or bigar. Now, let's talk about the Lok Adalat. So, basically, what is Lok Adalat? So, it is a forum where the cases which are pending in the court or which are which are at the pre-litigation stage are not yet brought before a court are basically compromised or settled in an amicable manner. That is meaning the Supreme Court has explained the work of institution that as well Lok Adalat should be there in the following ways. Now the Lok Adalat is an old form of adjudicating system that has been prevailing in India since ancient period of time, and its validity has not taken any even form into has not taken away even in the modern days too. Now the word Lok Adalat basically means the people's court, and this system is based on proper Gandhian principles, and it is one of the components of ADR, that is alternative dispute resolution system. Now, as we know that the Indian courts are basically overburdened with a lot of backlog of cases, and proper regular courts are also basically decided the cases involving a lengthy, expensive and very tedious procedure. Now, the court takes years together to settle even the petty cases. Now the Lok Adalat therefore provides an alternative solution to them to devise the expeditious and inexpensive justice for people. Now, in the proper Lok Adalat proceeding, there are no victors vanquished, and thus there is no rancor. Now, the experiment of Lok Adalat as an alternative mode of dispute settlement has come to be like accepted in India as very viable, economic, efficient, and informal one. Now, the Lok Adalat is basically another alternative in judicial justice. Now, this is in the recent strategy. Basically, we are trying to deliver the informal, cheap, and expeditious justice to the common man in a way of all this settling their dispute which are pending in courts. Also, they haven't which haven't yet reached the courts by negotiation, conciliation, and by adopting persuasive and common sense and human approach to all the problem of disputants with the assistant of specially trained and experienced members of a team of a consulators. Now let's talk about the statutory status that is there. Now the first Lok Adalat camp for the post independence era was organized in Gujarat in 1982. Now, this initiative proved out to be very successful in the settlement of disputes. Now, the institution of Lok Adalat then it tried to spread, it started to spreading to other parts of our country, and at that time the institution was functioning as a voluntary and conciliatory agency without any statutory backing for its decision. Now, in this view of growing popularity, there arose a demand for providing a statutory backing for this institution and the awards given by Lok Adalats. Hence, the institution of Lok Adalat has also been given a statutory status under the Legal Services Authority Act in 1987. Now, the act basically tries to make the some of the provisions that are basically related to all the organization function of Lok Adalats. Now, the State of Legal Services Authority or the District Legal Service Authority or the Supreme Legal High Court, TALO, basically try to organize the Lok Adalats at such intervals and places for exercising such jurisdiction and for such areas as to think as in which they think that it will fit. Now, the second point over here is that every Lok Adalat that has been organized as an area shall consist of the number of serving the retired judicial officer and other person in the area as they have specified agency that is organizing such Lok Adalat. And generally a Lok Adalat basically consists a judicial officer as the chairman and a lawyer like advocate and a social worker as member. Now, the third point over here is that a Lok Adalat shall have a jurisdiction to determine and to arrive at a compromise and a settlement between the parties to a dispute in respect of any case pending before any court and any matter which is falling within the jurisdiction of any court and is not brought before such court. Now we can see the Lok Adalat can also deal with not only such cases which are basically pending in the court, but it also tries to solve the disputes at pre-litigation stage, matters such as matrimonial family disputes, criminal, the compoundable offences, land acquisition, labor disputes, workmen's compensation cases, bank recovery, pension, housing board, slum clearance, housing finance, consumer grievance cases, electricity matters, then disputes that are relating to telephone bills, municipal matters, house tax, and dispute that is all related to cellular company and which have been taken in the Lok Adalats. But the Lok Adalat shall also have no jurisdiction in respect to any case or matter that is relating to an offence not compoundable under any law. In other words, we can also say that the offences that are non-compoundable under law fall outside the purview of Lok Adalat. Now, what are the benefits of Lok Adalat that they have given according to the Supreme Court? That there is no court fees first, and if the court fees is already paid, then the amount is refundable at the settled at the if the dispute is settled. And the basic feature of Lok Adalat are the procedural flexibility, speedy trial of disputes. There is no strict application of procedural laws like Civil Procedure Code, the Evidence Act, while assessing the claim by Lok Adalat. The parties to all the dispute can directly interact with the judges through their counsel, which is not possible in regular courts of law. And the award by the Lok Adalat is actually binding in the on the parties, and it has the status of a civil court and is non-appealable, which does not cause the delay in the settlement of disputes finally. Now that any case that is pending before the court has also been referred to the Lok Adalat, if the parties agree to settle the dispute, one of the parties makes an application to the court. The court is satisfied on the matter as an appropriate one to take the cognizance of the Lok Adalat. Then we can talk about the Lok Adalat shall basically have same powers that are vested in the civil court under the Code of Civil Procedure 1908, which are trying a suit in respect for the following matters: summoning and enforcing the attendance of any witness, examining a vote, discovery and production of any document, the reception of evidence of and affidavits, requisition of the any public record or document. And then further we have a Lok Adat that shall also have requisite powers to specify its own procedure of determination of an dispute that is coming before, and also all the procedures before a Lok Adalat shall also be deemed to be a judicial proceeding within the meaning of the Indian Penal Code in 1816. And every Lok Adalat shall also be deemed to be a civil court for the purpose of the Code of Criminal Procedure. And an award in the Lok Adalat shall also be deemed to of a civil court in order of any court, and every award made to by Lok Adalat shall also be final and binding to all the parties, and no appeal shall lie to any court against the award of the Lok Adalat. Now we can talk about the permanent adalats like the Legal Services Authority Act in 1987, basically amended it in 2002 to provide the establishment of permanent Lok Adalats, basically to deal with the cases pertaining to public utility services. And the reasons for the establishment of permanent adalats are like: first, that the Legal Services Authority Act in 1987 were basically enacted to constitute the legal services authority for providing free and competent legal services to the weaker sections of the society, to ensure that these opportunities for securing justice were not only denied to any citizen by reason of economic or other disabilities, to organize the Lok Adalat to ensure that the operation of legal system promotes justice on the basis of equal opportunity. And the second point is over here that the system of Lok Adalat, which is an innovative mechanism for an alternative dispute resolution, has proved to be very effective for resolving a lot of disputes in the spirit of conciliation outside the courts. However, the major drawback for the scheme for Lok Adalat has been said that it is basically based on compromise or settlement between the parties, and if the parties don't arrive at any compromise and settlement, the case is either returned to the court of law or the parties are advised to seek remedy in the court of law. Now, this causes like a necessary delay in the dispensation of the justice over there. Now, we can talk about the cases that arise in relation to public utility, like the Mahanagar Telephone Nigam Limited, Delhi Vidyut Board, and etc. That actually needed and settled urgently, so that people could get justice without any delay, even at the pre-litigation stage. And therefore, most of the petty cases which ought not to give on the regular courts would settle at the pre-litigation stage itself. That would actually reduce the workload of the regular courts. Now we are also talking about the amend to the Legal Services Act in 1987 is basically to set up the permanent lok adalats for basically providing compulsory pre-litigation mechanism. Now let's talk about the features. Now the permanent Lok Adalat basically consists of a chairman who is or has been a district judge and additional district judge and has held the judicial office higher in rank than of a district judge, or to the other person having an adequate experience in the public utility services. Now the permanent Lok Adalat basically shall exercise the jurisdiction in respect to the one or more of like public utility services and such transport services of passengers or by goods, by air, road, postal, telegram, for telephone services, supply of water, and etc. Basically, in the so all these are exercised in this jurisdiction. Now we can talk about the permanent lok adalat. Basically, shall up to rupees 10 lakhs, and however, the central government may increase the said pecuniary jurisdiction from time to time. Now, the permanent lok adalat shall not or not have jurisdiction in respect to any matter that is relating to offence non-compoundable under any law. And before any dispute is brought before any court, any party to the dispute may make an application that we have already talked about. And after that, an application that has been written is made to the permanent lok adalat. No party to that application shall invoke the jurisdiction of any court in the same disputes. Now, where it appears that the permanent lok adalats, there exists some elements of settlement which may be acceptable to the parties, and it shall formulate the terms of possible settlement or submit it to the parties for the observation in case of parties that reach an agreement. And the permanent lok adalat shall also pass an award in that terms also. In case any party basically fails to reach to any agreement, the permanent lok adalat shall decide the dispute on merits. Now, every award made by the permanent lok adalat shall also be final and binding to all the parties and shall be by a majority of person constituting in the permanent lok adalat. Now let's talk about the Family Code. Now the Family Code Act was passed in 1984, which basically enacted for the establishment of Family Code in view to promote all the conciliation and secure the speedy settlement of disputes that are relating to marriage, all the family affairs. And the reason for the for having a separate family code is that several association of women, other organization and individual have urged from time to time that the family settlement of family disputes, where they basically emphasize on the late conciliation and in achieving socially desirable results and adherence to strict laws, rules for procedure and evidence should be eliminated. Now the law commission in the 59th report in 97 also tries to stress upon the dealing with the all the dispute that are concerning to the family code that ought to adopt an approach that is radically different from adopted in the ordinary civil proceedings, and it should make the reasonable efforts for settlement before any commencement is made of the trial. Now the code of the civil procedure was amended in 1976 and to provide for a special procedure to be adopted in suits or the proceedings that is relating to the matters concerning to the family. But however, not much in use. We have also seen that the courts are in adopting all these conciliatory procedure, or the courts basically tries to continue to deal with the family disputes in the same manner as other civil matters, and the same advisory approach that prevails. Now the need was therefore they felt in the public interest to establish family courts for a speedy settlement of family disputes. Therefore, the main objective and reason for setting up a family court is basically to create a specialized court which is exclusively deal with the family matters, so that such court may have the necessary expertise to deal with the cases of expeditions and we can also see all their expertise is basically, and expedition is basically the two main factors for establishing a family court. Now, basically, to constitute a mechanism for conciliation of the disputes that is relating to family, or to provide an inexpensive remedy, we should also look at to the fourth point over here, that basically it has a flexibility and informal atmosphere in the conduct of all its proceedings. Now, what are the features of family code? The first, that it provides the establishment of family codes by the state governments in consultation with the high courts. It makes it obligatory on the state governments to set up some of the family codes in every city and town with the population exceeding 1 million. It enables the state government to set up family codes in areas also if they deemed it very necessary. Now, the exclusively it provides where within the jurisdiction of the family code the matters that are relating to matrimonial relief on including the nullity of marriage, judicial separation, divorce, reconstitution of conjugal rights, declaration to all the validity of marriage as a matrimonial status to any person, the property of spouses of either of them, declaration of legitimacy of any person, guardianship of a person or the custody of any minor, and the maintenance of wife, children and parents. It also tries to make it obligatory on the part of family court to endeavor the first instant to effect of reconciliation or a settlement between the parties to a family dispute. During this stage the proceedings will be informal and rigid rules of procedure shall not apply. Now, it also provides us the association of social welfare agencies, the counselors, and during the conciliation stage, and also secure the services of medical and welfare experts. It provides that the parties to a dispute before the family court shall not be entitled as to the right to be represented by the legal practitioner, and however the court may in interest of justice try to seek the assistance of legal expert as a try to speak the seek its assistant to the legal expert. Now, it also simplifies the rules of evidence and procedure that enable the family court to deal with a dispute, and it provides for only one right to appeal, which shall lie to the High Court. Now, let's talk about the Nyayalayas. So, the Nyayalayas are basically Act in 2008 that has been enacted to provide the establishment of Gram Nyayalayas. Now, this is established at the grassroots level for the purpose to provide access to justice and the citizens at their doorstep, and to ensure that the opportunity for securing justice are not denied to any citizen due to social, economic, and other disabilities. Now, the reason behind establishment of Gram Nalas are basically the access to justice by the poor or the disadvantaged that remains of a wide problem, a worldwide problem, despite the diverse approaches, strategies that have been formulated, implemented, and addressed it. Now, in our country, in Article 39A, the Constitution basically directs the state to secure that the operation of the legal system promotes justice on the basis of equal opportunity and shall provide free legal aid to ensure that the opportunities for securing justice are not denied to any citizen by reason of economic or other disabilities. Now, we can also see in the past the government has also taken a lot of steps that to strengthen all its judicial system by simplifying all its procedural laws and incorporating the various alternative disputes and resolution mechanisms such as arbitration, conciliation, and the mediation, and conducting the lok adalats and etc. But this measure basically required to strengthen further. Now, the Law Commission of India, in its 114 report, basically talked about the Gram Nalai, suggested basically establishment is to be speedy, inexpensive, and substantial justice could be provided to every common man. Now, the Gram Nalais Act in 2008 was broadly based on the recommendation of the Law Commission. Now, the justice to the poor at the every doorstep is basically a dream of a poor, and by setting such Gram Nalais in the rural areas would actually bring people of rural areas PDs affordable and substantial justice to them. Now, what are the some of the features of Gram Nalais Act is basically first that there should be a court of judicial magistrate of the first class proceeding with the officer that is known as Nyay Adhikari shall also be appointed by the state government in consultation with the High Court. Now, the Gram Nala is basically shall be established for every panchayat at intermediate level or at a group of a panchayat at the intermediate level in a district where there is no panchayat at intermediate level in any state or a group. Now, all the Nyay Adhikaris basically will preside over these Gram Nalas as strictly judicial officer and will be drawing the same salary, deriving the same powers as the first class magistrate is working under the high courts. Now, the Gram Nalas are basically shall be a mobile court, or it shall be exercise all the powers in basically all the criminal and civil courts that are the functions of all the courts. Now the seat in this will be located at the headquarters of the intermediate panchayat, that will they will go to village and work there and dispose at the cases. Now they shall try criminal cases, civil suits, also claim dispute, which is actually mentioned in the first schedule and the second schedule to the act. Now the central as well as the state government has given power to them to amend the first schedule and second schedule as per their respective legislative competence. Now, the Gram Nala shall also give summary of proceeding in criminal trial, and they will exercise powers in civil court, and certain modifications shall also be the special procedure for that has been provided in the act. Now, they should also actually try to settle the dispute as far as possible by bringing conciliation between the parties for the purpose. It shall make use of the conciliator to be appointed for this purpose. Now the judgment and order passed by all Gram Nalai are basically to warn any delay in the execution. The Gram Nalai shall also follow some summary procedure of execution. Now Gram Nalai is also Nyalais or shall not be bounded by the rules of evidence and provided by the Indian Evidence Act in 1872, but it should be guided by the principle of natural justice and subject to any law made by High Court. Now, they shall not be bound by the rule of evidence that has been provided in the Indian Evidence Act in 1872. Now, the appeal in all the criminal cases shall also lie in the court of session, which shall be heard and disposed of within the 6 months from the date of filing it at the appeal. And a person accused of any offence may also file an application of plea for bargaining. Now, the establishment, we can talk about that the central government has decided to meet the non-recurring expenditure of establishment of this Ramnaya, so subject to ceiling of rupees 18 lakhs, out of which the 10 lakhs is for the construction of court, 5 lakhs for the vehicles, 3 lakhs for the office equipment. More than 5,000 Ramna expected to be set up under this act, which central government would provide rupees 1400 crore, by which they would give assistance to the concern the state union territories under Gram Nalai Act in 2008 to be established in consultation with respect to high courts. Now, every majority of states has now set up a regular courts at taluk level and a reluctance over the police officer and other state beneficiary to invoke the jurisdiction of Nyalais for the lukewarm response of the bar and non-availability of the stamp vendors, problem of concurrent jurisdiction on the regular courts are also other issues that are indicated by them. And it is also decided in the conference that the state government and the high court should decide the question for establishment of gram nalais, whether wherever they are feasible and by taking into account all their local problems. Now the focus over here is basically like setting up all the gram nalais in the taluks where the regular high courts have not been set up. So we have finished our video on subordinate courts, and if you really like this video, you can like, subscribe and share and comment, and thank you so much.